Okay, one more video today, and then I'm going to get back to looking at ePortfolios. So this is much more kind of like content and not administrivia of the class. And it's something that I always like to end the semester with because I think it's really easy for us as American citizens, one of what 330 million people, to feel like we alone have very little power to impact the world or to make a change in our government. And I often hear students say, I'm just one person, like, why should I vote? My vote's not going to change anything. And I always like to tell this story at the end of the semester about this bill that came before the Texas legislature the last year that I lived in Texas. So this was 10 or so years ago. And an important backdrop to this is that you need to know that as a college professor, I get emails like literally every day, and I get packages in the mail several times a semester from textbook publishers asking me to adopt their book. Textbook publishers pay sales reps to come around campus multiple times a semester. So they come and stalk our offices and bring us like snacks and swag, and they're always trying to get us to adopt a textbook. Because if I adopt an American government textbook, which I haven't, then they are going to sell 400 copies of that in a year, and that's a lot of money. Do you know how much textbooks cost? So this bill in the Texas legislature, the last year I lived there before I moved to Tennessee, would have required textbook publishers to disclose to faculty members when they're, trying to sell, trying to get you to adopt their textbook. It would have required them to disclose how much that textbook would cost a student on average. So it's a pretty easy bill, right? It's just saying that faculty members like me should be informed of the cost of the book before they decide whether or not to adopt it. So it's a great bill. I would have loved that bill to go into effect. But we had a guest speaker on the campus where I was in grad school who came. He was the head of the education committee, I think the higher education subcommittee of the education committee of the the Texas House. And he's from Houston. And he said, this bill came before our committee and it died in committee. And so I want you to take just a minute and ask yourself, why would such a non-controversial bill die in committee? I mean, everybody wants college to be more affordable, right? Everybody wants students to be able to afford the book so that they can do well in the class. Why would this die in committee? And the answer to that question comes down to who the bill benefits, students, and who the bill has the power to hurt, which is textbook publishers. Now, I'm not one of those cynics who feels like people who serve in state legislatures or in the US Congress, the US Senate, are bought off by big companies. But what I do know is that the people who run those companies are typically older, wealthier, wider, and more informed than are the people who would benefit students who are younger, less wealthy, more diverse, and less attentive to government. And so the potential cost to the legislator, to the state representative who's thinking about this bill, if they vote for it, it's going to help students, but those students are not likely to come out and like support them and vote for them because of that. But if they vote against it, then all of the people who work at these textbook publishers are going to be glad that Texas is on their side. So in the end, it comes down to who is paying attention to government and who's willing to hold that government accountable. So when you vote, when you have the opportunity to vote in any election for the president, for Congress, for the state legislature or the governor, all the way down to city council and county commission, when you vote, Your vote obviously gets counted to decide who's going to win and who's not going to win. And that's important. But if the only reason you're voting is that you hope to change the outcome, then you're going to be very dissatisfied by the exercise of your right to vote, because your vote is probably not going to decide the election ever in your lifetime. However, your vote also signals to the people who represent you, the people who we pay out of our earned money to work on your behalf in government. Your vote tells them that you're paying attention and that they would be wise to pay attention to you. I think that if we had if we had a generation of college students who were as engaged and involved as their grandparents are in politics, our government would look ridiculously different than it does right now. Government works for the people who show up and who participate. Even if that means that your candidate doesn't win, it means that every candidate is paying attention to you and to people like you. So you can make a difference. We've seen it throughout this class. Gregory Watson getting the 27th Amendment ratified, Bryan Stevenson fighting for people who are wrongly accused and on death row. He now has 100 attorneys and staff working with him in Montgomery because one person decided, I'm not going to let this happen. One person can make a difference. But the easiest way that you can make a difference is just to pay attention and make sure your elected officials, the people who are paid because you work and you pay taxes, making sure they know what you think they should do. It can feel really demotivating when you see that one party has control of basically everything in your state. If you're in Tennessee, that's Republicans. And if you're a Republican, you're thinking, yeah, but I bet you don't agree with everything they do. And if you're a Democrat, if you live in Tennessee, you're thinking, I mean, there's no point because Democrats are never going to win in a statewide office. That doesn't mean that you can't impact what government does. So the last thing that I want to leave you with this semester is that your participation can make a difference. And if everyone who watches this video decides to pay attention and participate long term, we can have a real impact on the direction of this country. Never doubt that one person can make a change, because all change began with one person. I'm so grateful that you were part of this class. In a pandemic semester, it's hard, and you all have shown up. You have inspired me. You've wowed me. My colleagues think that if I give students as much power and authority and autonomy and agency as I have this semester, that you'll all just take advantage and do nothing. There will always be students who do that, but you have proven this semester that you care enough to learn. I never doubted that you did. But your creativity, your passion, your engagement, your willingness to talk about political topics with one another and be respectful and kind and humane, it bowls me over. It is the privilege of my lifetime to do this job with you. So thank you, and I hope you'll stay in touch.